Brad,
Stef,
welcome to my studio.
thank you. Lucky to be here.
So, not so long ago, we started working together for the first time. And we are in the early stages of what's a long-term intervention with one of your key clients. Have you seen this?
It's familiar.
So the very high-level short version, quickly. What do you do?
Sure, short version. I probably should be able to describe what I do. I help organizations understand how to be more human in a world that's gone digital crazy, under the banner headline of better humaning, because I think we've forgotten how to human well.
Now be polite and ask me what I do.
What do you do, Stef?
So I help organizations to ramp up employee engagement and to boost workplace culture. And we've known for years that there was an intersection between what we did, and then we spoke about and thought about and talked about and slept on it, and then we took the plunge. So why do you think there's an intersection between what you do and what Steve, that's my business partner in Australia, and I paused there for a sec, because we're a long way away from being business partners, but we're working more closely together than I've worked with anyone else in a very long time. What is there at the intersection of your body of work? Because you have a comprehensive, deep body of work. It's not just this. You have a deep body of work. And we have a deep body of work. What sits at that intersection? What's at the intersection?
I think the intersection is this that you refer to. This was the start. And again, myself and my then business partner and co-author Andy, and I say ex-business partner because Andy left the business because she immigrated.
Let's do the posh thing and go onto your camera.
My camera. Okay. So Andy exited the business because she immigrated with the intention to start a still human office in Amsterdam. It was during COVID, very difficult times to start a business. So Andy went and got into employment. So I always credit Andy because Andy was significant in I don't call it research, the observation work that we did. This is the base for, as you say, a big piece of work that's unfolded in terms of a method for how we human better. Now, the start of it, which is this, was about the human experience touch points that create a high quality experience that we are responsible for creating, or a low quality experience as well with a lack of intentionality for everybody around us. Everybody wakes up in the morning, if they have gainful employment, and goes and creates experience for the people around them. Now, what's frightening about that is it's where we spend the bulk of our waking day. Most of us spend the bulk of our waking lives at work. And for many people, they don't have control or awareness of the quality of the experience that they are having and creating. You asked about the intersection. The intersection for me is a big part of the lack of intentionality is we are engaging with stories and narrative that creates the reality that we think into, believe into, and behave into. And that's where your work comes straight into it and is a massive contributor for the quality or lack of quality of experience people have.
Well, I'll say again, not just my work, my and Steve
Correct.
Simpson's work.
Correct.
And you know that even though Steve and I have been in partnership for 30 years or something now, Steve was the original creator of the UGRs concept. Yeah. So we go as the creators of the concept, but Steve really created it, and then we co-evolved it beyond that. And that's been like a 30-year journey now. And the employee engagement piece of work is a body of work that comes off the back of my, not a thesis, you do a thesis for a PhD, my dissertation for my master's in leadership. And the employee engagement work is, well, that's not really true, because me doing that master's was off the back of the self-discovery work that I'd done for myself, trying to figure out how to, I suppose, do more, be more, and have more. And that led to that opportunity for me to complete that program. And that dissertation was then a coming together of all of the work I had done for myself in the previous 20 years before that. Yes, I am that old now. And I now combine these two bodies of work, my engagement piece of work and the UGR's piece of work. And as you were explaining what you and Andy had done and what you had built, I was thinking touch point upon touch point upon touch point about how the way we bring ourselves to work every day impacts on others. And a cornerstone of my framework around employee engagement is based on that book, and I'm not just potty mouthing here, Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber, professor at the London School of Economics. And David Graeber says we are all like King Sisyphus, doomed by the gods in Greek mythology to roll the boulder up the hill for all of eternity. Yep. And every night the boulder rolls down again. And then he borrowed from Frankl's work, which I was familiar with long before I discovered Graeber's work. It was Frankl's work that helped me dig myself out of the trenches a little bit myself. And his insights led to Graeber's understanding that you can unbullshit your job by benefiting others and making things better. Well, like, duh. If you can humanize better by building a more engaged environment at work to the benefit of the people that you work with, but ultimately, because this all comes from Frankl, in the pursuit of purpose and meaning for your own life, which you achieve by doing two things: committing yourself to people other than yourself, which Graeber translated as benefiting others, and by committing yourself to a cause greater than yourself, which is Graeber's take is making things better. You don't just unbullshit your job, you make your life better. And if there was an intersection, like, holy moly.
But you're making all sorts of lights go off in my mind, because in our 12, so in the book we talk about the 12 essentials, which started off as 5. We were looking for 5. What are the 5 critical human experience touch points that great organizations to work at invest in and make sure they get right? They don't want to drop the ball on those. And so we were looking for what are those. So we spoke to, and I hated when people embellish. There are millions of people, it wasn't millions, but it was thousands, and hundreds of, a few hundred leaders looking for the overlaps. 5 became 7 and 7 became 12. One of them is shared purpose. And this is where I think organizations get it wrong. And you've just said something which highlights this. It's critically important to have organizational purpose because that's part of the story. If you don't have a story, what do people follow and energize into? But I think there's an error in that we try and make people believe that they need to find personal purpose inside the organizational purpose. I don't think that's the key. I think if everybody wakes up in the morning with an intention and a purpose to create an improved experience and higher levels of health and harmony for the people around them, and that is the purpose. Yes, we'll have the business thing.
The other stuff will follow.
100%.
It becomes an unintended consequence.
100%.
How can you have an environment, how can you possibly have an environment where people are focused on one another, on benefiting each other, on making each other's load lighter,
right,
on creating a place where people can leave work less broken, right, at the end of every shift, right, so that they can go home and have a life, maybe read a bedtime story, it's a metaphor, mm-hmm, maybe do a garden tour, mm-hmm, it's a metaphor. Mm-hmm. How can you do that and then not retain customers, deliver quality, have growth? Like, it's not possible. But I think the focus. So we spoke earlier of a common friend, and I don't even know if you know that we've explored doing some stuff together. We spoke early of Tiffany's Dan and an insight that he shared with me around the corporate hoax of how organizations make things better, but they don't really. Mm-hmm. And the call to action of why we need to, of the call to action being that the ultimate purpose is to serve the enterprise and the organization. And that's the wrong foundation.
Agreed.
And that's how so much other, like almost every it sounds like I'm dissing other people's work, but almost every other organizational development intervention that I've ever come across was focused on driving organizational outcomes, making the organization bigger and better. And it's flawed.
I agree.
Because people still go home broken at the end of every shift.
I agree.
And unless we're going to make this a 7-hour video, I suppose then we need to we need to reduce now the final overlap that UGRs is the methodology with which to embed all of this. That the UGR system, the UGRs concept, which is a process that helps organizations to design a better culture, understand where they are now, and embed that envisioned culture, that all these things really do go together. That we can humanize, as you and Andy say, that we can make this a better place, drive employee engagement through authentic leadership, and that we can then apply a process, a methodology, with which we can design and embed a culture that will allow people to be safe, man. Not safe just against physical harm, but to have an opinion, to be allowed to make a mistake, to be able to ask for help, to be able to rock up at work and say, hey boss, I'm having a really shit day. Like, I don't know if I can really deliver everything I need to deliver today. And if we can get that right, holy moly, will we then enable and empower those 12 steps in your model and make it a place where people can come and do and be their best. I'll leave it to you to wrap up, if there is a wrap up here.
Well, as I'm listening to you talk about those aspects of human experience, what you're talking about is that we're able to go to work and be human. But be human can be a good experience and a bad experience. But none of that happens without intentionality.
And let's
So much for me wrapping.
no, because this sounds like it's soft. This sounds like it must be so human that it's okay to be slack, that it's okay not to deliver. No, we hold one another to a higher standard.
And that's how you achieve it.
But we do it in a way, let me just check, it was on page 83, I think.
But there's a very important
We do it by
point.
being more human.
But there's a very important point you raise. When we do this work, and there's lots of elements to the methodology, the first thing people say is it feels like now we're going to wrap people up in cotton wool. We're going to be all nice. And no, not at all.
We're going to raise standards.
You're going to raise the standards. We are incorruptible around performance. It's not. In fact, we're pushing for even higher performance, but through accessing human beings as opposed to shutting them down.
I'm going to wrap up.
Go for it.
Because I'm just better at it.
Unless I interrupt you.
One of the cornerstones of UGRs is this concept of should or should not do versus must or must not do. Like if it's a bank, you must not steal the money. If you steal the money, you can't work here anymore. But if it's one of your bank's values to demonstrate respect, that's a should not do rule. Because even though we want it to be in place, people don't show up and do it consistently. Because if they're not in the mood, or if their team lost, or if they had traffic on the way into work, or if their boss is in a shitty mood,
right,
they rock up and justify in the back of their minds that if they don't show me respect, I'm not going to show other people respect.
Yep.
So the values which ought to be must-do rules, evaporate. And we don't hold people accountable to them. In this world where we're talking about, our values become must-do rules. You cannot work here if you don't. You won't fit in if you don't deliver, if you don't do what you said you were going to do, if you don't perform high-quality work, if you don't retain our customers, if you don't respect our people. You're just not going to fit in. This is the wrong place for you. So better you go to where you came from, where it was easier to not live up to our values. So the whole humanizing thing is not an easy opt-out. It's a more harsh reality. The standard is higher. Now you can wrap up.
But there's a critical point to what you just said. Don't tell that story as an organization about the must-do rules and then be corruptible. Because otherwise, what's that worth? There has to be incorruptibility, but what that requires, because the framework is rock solid, is that most human beings need to learn how to human better and hold other human beings to humaning better. That's where that works.
Where our intersection is that the UGRs enables that insight. It makes it possible to live and behave like that.
Spot on.
Brad, yes to doing more.
Lekker.
Okay, bye. Which camera? Bye.